Welcome everyone to Mindful Moments. Today I'm really excited to have Dr. Elizabeth Erwin with us. She is a professor at Montclair State University and just one of the real experts and thoughtful and wonderful people in the world of early childhood and mindfulness. She's published many articles in academic journals and has contributed to books. And today she's here to talk to us about her book, which was recently published, The Power of Presence, which is really just a wonderful contribution to early childhood and brings to light so many of the ideas and the research and what's happening in the world of mindfulness and the early years. So welcome, Elizabeth, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Helen. It's so great to be here. Thank you. That was a lovely introduction, and it's always a highlight to speak with you. I just appreciate the work that you do in the world, so thank you for having me.
Thanks. So tell us, first of all, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, it's a good question because, I didn't seek out to write a book. The publishers actually approached me. They had seen my work, they were interested, and I remember thinking, well, I don't necessarily want to write a book just about strategies and practices because I feel like there's some really good tools out there. And so I thought, well, what really speaks to me is this whole idea of, mindfulness and being present and noticing with kind of justice and equity in the world and making a difference, in our families, in our communities, in the greater, world that we live in. And so it was more of a social justice lens. And I asked the publisher if they would be interested in something like that. And luckily they said yes. And so that's really how it came out. And, I'll tell you honestly, I had never really intended to study mindfulness, in all honesty. I have been over the past few years. But, I had my own personal mindfulness practice, yoga, meditation for years and years, a couple decades. And I just never wanted to study mindfulness because I thought, it's like studying breath or something that we need, to live and to be. It just wasn't an interest. So I kept my personal and professional lives really separate. But over the years, I started seeing mindfulness more in education, come out more and more, and then early childhood. And it was almost like a light bulb moment. I just thought, okay, maybe it's time to really think about how these two could be integrated. And what I noticed is that my grad students at the university, most of whom are teaching already, were really interested in the topic. So that's how it all kind of came out. And for what it's worth, I really think the bigger things in life, at least for me, aren't planned. They're maybe I'm thinking about them, vibrationally, I don't know, and years later, things kind of come to me. So I see that it was a dream come true because I think I really somewhere deep inside wanted to, have conversations about being present and what that means and looking at issues like, I don't know, pausing or stillness or even time. So thanks for asking. Long about way to get there, but
No, it's always so interesting to see how these kind of things come about, and I feel the same as you. Sometimes things just happen and come into our lives at the right time, but it's really a beautiful gift you've given to the community. I think it's got so many ideas and so many practical things, but also a lot of discussion and research and sharing of resources, which is really wonderful. I think what's showing what's out there and things. So tell us, what did you find? Was there anything that really surprised you as you went about researching and writing the book?
That's a good question. You know, from a personal perspective, it was a little more difficult because the publishers had asked to translate the research into practice for early childhood practitioners. I wanted to extend that to families as well. And, you know, I write, you know, from a researcher, more academic perspective, but I didn't want to write in that way for this kind of book. And so just even writing from a personal perspective and being really vulnerable and open and reflective about my own journey. So that was something I don't think I anticipated. It was a little more, it was just different than I had expected. So I was getting used to that. And when I really took a very deep dive into, you know, mindfulness and early childhood, you know, I was kind of intrigued about the research. Even though I know sometimes teachers don't really care about the research as much, I happen to teach a research course at the university, and, you know, research is just about searching and researching, and it's this inquiry, you know, about questions we might have. So I see it very tied to mindfulness and meditation. And so, you know, a lot of things that I had thought about, not that it was surprising, but it was so obvious, I think, to me that, you know, a lot of the research on mindfulness and children and or education is about like fixing the child, you know, about this child has non-compliant behaviors, where this child, you know, is really energetic and need to, you know, help her calm down, or those kinds of things. So mindfulness was almost, in the studies that I reviewed, looked at as a means, you know, to change behavior in a way, change the child. And that always felt very uncomfortable and not authentic at all to who children are and what mindfulness is all about. So that was kind of confirmed. Interesting. You know, I've come to see that research about mindfulness is important to help people who are maybe at a policy level or an administrative level feel confident and comfortable about mindfulness. So I think there is a place, there are other places too, but it's, I guess the other thing that's surprising, I mean, there's probably a 10,000 things along the journey, but, you know, the whole idea that, you know, I believe, you know, children are naturally mindful. They're joyful and curious, and it's over time they learn through messages in our society, from parents, from teachers, from peers, how maybe not to be in the moment. And so that's kind of interesting to me as well. And that's why the book is really for teachers about cultivating their own mindfulness practice, because it's, you know, hard to teach something if we're not, you know, if we don't have buy-in. So I think this notion that children are already mindful is not necessarily always embraced. I don't know if that's making sense.
No, I know what you mean as well. Like you see children so engaged in their play, they're in the moment, aren't they? They're already practicing, and as you said, that curiosity to go out in a garden and they'll find the ladybug and, you know, be so involved in noticing the details that sometimes we don't notice.
And I think that's right. You know, everything you're saying, and part of it was, you know, there's this whole international, because it's not just in the US, it's happening globally, where there's such a focus on standardized assessments, even for the little ones, and teacher-directed, you know, curriculum and activities. So I had actually written a whole chapter on that, and the editors had suggested taking it out. which I did. However, I just put it into a new article. So
Oh, good.
there'll be a kind of on justice and joy and all of that. But the whole, that's the idea that I didn't want to get so caught up in, the pressures teachers are facing. And it's not just teachers, it's administrators, systems as well, with these forces, these pressures to be more teacher directed, which is, you're saying, children aren't able to play in the garden or inspect a ladybug for, 20 minutes if that's what they want to do. And so, well, there are a couple ways I wanted to go. Anyway, so that is one thing also that I've been thinking a lot about. I want to focus on what we can do instead of, looking at the challenge and the pressures. I'd rather focus on solutions. How can we either individually or collectively, certainly in partnership with children, be mindful, just be present, as a way of kind of resisting or challenging these other things that are obviously taking place as well.
Yeah, wonderful. And Elizabeth, what kind of is the I know you have many messages in the book, but what would be the kind of one thing that you hope all the readers would take away from your book, or maybe something that they might shift their perspective on a little bit?
Also a good question. Just the notion that really peace begins with me and one another. So when, I know that sounds overly simplified, but it's really about the choices we make day to day and the language we use. And, there's a whole chapter on what is normal and, what we perceive as different and sometimes the judgment we put around that. So, this idea of peace, I've been thinking about it as ease, right? It begins with each and every one of us, children included, and we can't really expect or support children in that way if we're not in that space of feeling, present or focused or at ease or joyful. And so I think when we can do that individually, within our own practice and with children, it also manifests collectively. So there is this sense of kind of a collective movement about being present, pausing, not being in such a rush.
Yeah. I hope that maybe this time in the world where things are, a little bit uncertain and lots of changes have happened, we can reassess what's really important in our schools and how we connect with children, and hopefully some good will come out of it when things do kind of go back to a more normal setting. I know people are experiencing all different types of learning at the moment, but thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I just want to say, yes, I as we're coming to a close, I want to say thank you for saying that, because there are people all over the world who really are experiencing things, in very challenging ways. So I don't want to make light at all. On the contrary. And so the whole idea is, how do we show up and be present, for children especially, and each other.
That's a very good point. The support of colleagues, I think, has never been more important than during this time, right? And collaboration and innovation and thinking of new ways to reach and connect with all the people that we work with, whether they be adults or children. So, but thank you so much, Elizabeth, for coming on and sharing just a little bit about the book, The Power of Presence. Really, I cannot recommend this book enough. It's really something I feel every early childhood educator needs to have in their library, not only for professionally. I mean, there's so much wonderful work in there, but as you said, there's a lot of ideas and support for building your own practice and your own connection to peace and mindfulness, which, as you said, is the foundation or the key, right, to all of this. So we will have the link to where you can purchase the book. It's in all major bookshops, Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, etc. But we'll have the link there, so it's easy to find. And Elizabeth will be joining us on the Preschool Mindfulness Summit. So I'm sure we'll hear more about her work and what's happening in the field on there. But thank you for coming on and sharing today.
Always a joy, Helen. Thank you for inviting me. Great to see you.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you.